There's a very false claim that has been circulating ever since Trump won the election. And it is so widespread that people on the left and the right continue to repeat it without question. I hear it every day. I see it in my comments every day. And I really want to take some time to bring some clarity to this claim and to correct it because I think we should be correcting it as often as we are hearing it. And the claim is that half of Americans voted for Trump. And that means that half of Americans are happy with what Trump is doing right now. But the truth is that half of Americans did not vote for Trump, and not even half of eligible voters voted for Trump. And it's really important that we understand how little support Trump has, because when those on the right realize that not everybody's on board, and then those on the left realize that not everybody's on board, then we might actually be able to come together to figure out that this is not okay. What's going on isn't okay. And we can kind of put away our apathy and our hopelessness and find productive solutions for change. There are 340 million people that live in the United States. And out of those 340 million people, 245 million of those are eligible to vote. Out of those 245 million people that are eligible to vote, only 155 million people actually showed up to cast a vote. And then only 77 million people cast a vote for Trump. Now, my brain, when I say only 77 million people, kind of lights up because I'm like, man, that's not only, that's a lot of people. But I also understand that humans, beliefs, politics are incredibly complex and nuanced. And just because 77 million people cast a vote for Trump, that does not mean that Trump has 77 million people with unwavering loyalty to him. And I think it's really important we remember that too. So as you start to break the numbers down, look at how many people live in the United States. Look at how many people are eligible to vote. Look at how many people actually showed up to vote. Then look at how many people showed up to vote for Trump. Out of 340 million people that live here, only 77 million people voted for Trump, and not every one of those 77 million people did so with glee. Some people went to the polls and had a serious confliction within them. Some people regretted their vote as soon as they cast it. Some are regretting their vote right now. I know that's hard to believe, but it's the truth. This space has always been a place where we can look at things realistically, where we can stay grounded in reality and we can think critically. And I want to continue to do that even when our emotions are high, even when we're worried and scared, because it's really important. And looking at the numbers and really understanding where we're all at, I think will help kind of balance us back out. And so if you consider the fact that Trump has at most 30% of eligible voting population support, we can work with that. Okay, we can work with that. And I know that there are a lot of people regretting their vote now too. And so his support it's dwindling. But there are reasons that I think it feels as though Trump has the majority of American support. And one of those is still apathy. I think a lot of people are apathetic, hiding away, they're just trying to go about their lives and do their thing. And they're not really being vocal. They're just kind of hoping things don't get too bad and trying to keep to themselves. The loudest voices tend to make us feel as though they are the majority, and really the loudest voices are rarely the majority. And so because we see MAGA everywhere, and because Trump is flooding the zone and making sure that all of our attention is on him and in his base 24/7, because that's what he likes and that's what works for his administration. Because of that, it feels and appears as though we are very isolated in our resistance against this administration. And then there's also the psychological impact of repetition, which is Trump's favorite thing to do. You repeat something often enough and it just becomes normal in reality. It is, how he has shifted the Overton window so much. He starts by joking about something, he says it over and over again, and then it becomes real. Just like he joked about tariffs over and over again. Nobody thought, they thought he was just being a troll. And now look where we are. Trump jokes about a third term. It's just so funny. Haha, Trump joke, until now he's like, no, I'm serious. Yeah, I want a third term. So repetition has just that's what he does, and that's what the Republicans do. They just have to repeat something often enough and it becomes reality and it becomes normal for people. And when we hear this repeated, that there is a mandate by the American people to the president, as my congresswoman liked saying, we hear it over and over again. Eventually we start to believe it. So that's their goal, is let's just repeat it. Let's say it as often as possible. I thought it was so interesting when I went to the town hall with Diana Harshbarger and I heard her say this, that there's been a mandate. And then after that, in all these media interviews with all these different Republican representatives and with Trump and pretty much everybody in the GOP, I noticed they were all repeating this exact same thing. And I also noticed that my congresswoman was reading from a book, a binder that was probably given to her to feed her all of her talking points, because she's not thinking for herself or thinking about her district. She's just being fed information from the Trump administration. That's what they do. They're feeding the same thing to all of their loyalists, and then they're going out and just feeding it to the public. It's just repetition to get us to believe whatever their narrative is, even if it's so far from the truth. If right-wing conservatives realized that half of the country is not with them, they might not be so emboldened to support the things that they're supporting, but they just assume. They say, Trump says it, half the country likes it, and I'm going with it too, instead of actually thinking through it critically for themselves. The left, when they assume that half of the country voted for this, they tend to feel very alone in their resistance against it and their opposition. When you think that you're outnumbered, you think the majority of people want this, then it becomes very easy to just kind of sink back and not want to really do much and just try to enjoy your life and mind your own business and hope it all blows over. But both sides are getting it wrong. And if both sides realize that it's not the majority supporting this, we might start to think for ourselves a little bit more, and we might take the necessary action to preserve our freedoms and our democracy from this administration and from its consequences. I've seen so many people in my comments when I tell them, hey, call your representatives, join a protest, do these things. They just say, what's the point? This is what people want. And that is exactly what the administration is hoping that we think. And it is the goal of their repetition of this lie that the majority wants this. So we have to stop thinking that way, and we have to start looking at this realistically, knowing that we actually outnumber them. And by we, I mean those of us who do not fully support everything Trump does, no matter what it is. There is so much going on right now. It's all very fast. It's hard to keep up with. I have been wanting to make videos on current events, but I'm having a really hard time keeping up, to be honest, and maintaining my life and making sure I'm taking time for self-care, which is just non-existent right now. And so I know that if I'm having a hard time keeping up, everyone else is having a hard time keeping up too. It feels very dizzying and just very hopeless for a lot of us. And so we don't want to take the action because we feel like it's a waste of time. Because why? When Trump has so much support, but Trump does not have so much support. And additionally, I know that there are a lot of people that are kind of speculating on the election results and whether or not they were manipulated in some way. I am not going to jump onto a theory that has not yet been proven about election fraud. And that's a whole can of worms I don't want to get into. But I will say this, that whether or not Trump rigged the election, I do not know. But if he did, in the event that the election was manipulated and that it was manipulated in his favor, that means he has even less support than we realize, even less than a quarter of the population, even less than 30% of eligible voters. So if that's the case, then I hope that that's the case, to be honest. At this point, I kind of hope that the election was messed with, and because that just means that we have more people on our side that don't like what's happening. The number of people that have unwavering loyalty to Trump, That number is very small. It seems like a lot. They're very loud. The administration won. There are a lot of people cheering this on. That is true. But just because they're the loudest doesn't mean that they are the most. Doesn't mean that they have more numbers. It just means they're being very loud. And so we can't mistake loudness with majority, because those two don't equal out. And it's really important that we continue staying rooted in reality, because the reality is what will actually drive us to action and give us hope. Because if we realize that the reality is that Trump does not have the support of half of Americans, he doesn't have the support of 40% of Americans, he barely has the support of 30% of Americans, then that means there are 70% of us, or 70% of people in the United States, that really don't like what's happening and didn't want this, didn't vote for this. And now that there are people even that voted for Trump that are starting to wake up and look around and say, wow, this is not looking like what I thought it was going to look like. I thought we were going to get a better economy. I thought things were going to be more affordable. I didn't know that, Trump was going to impose these extreme tariffs that was going to make everything else expensive. I didn't know Trump was going to take away veterans benefits. I didn't know that he was going to, try to eliminate all of these federal departments that give us things that we need and help us as Americans and help struggling people. I didn't know he was going to try to gut Medicaid and gut Social Security and take away the things that we pay into and have earned in favor of giving his billionaires tax breaks. It doesn't even matter that he said he was going to do a lot of these things. What matters is that a lot of people didn't know because they were misinformed, they were led by misinformation, disinformation. They were uneducated. They just weren't paying attention. There are so many reasons, and it's not a justification. It's not an excuse. It's just a reason. A lot of people did not vote for what is happening right now. They didn't vote for us to be sending legal U.S. residents over to foreign prisons on a whim. To be tortured and possibly killed and possibly never seen again. I'm willing to bet that a lot of people who are very MAGA, if they really knew that this was happening, would not support it. I don't think. Maybe that's wishful thinking. Maybe that's me being naive. I've been called naive a lot lately because of my hope. But there are a lot of things happening right now that most of Americans don't know or don't support. And that's really the big issue, is a lot of people don't know what's happening because we have so much information being thrown at us every day. It is impossible to stay up to date on everything and live a life and take care of yourself. It's just impossible. And that's the goal. It's done that way on purpose so that we feel dizzy and incapable of really having a firm grasp on what's happening. And if you're only paying attention to your propaganda news media that's just kind of feeding you, Trump news, Trump talking points, then you're just going to go based off of what you're being told. And they're telling you it's the best economy. Trump's doing the greatest. This is the greatest presidency of all time. But there are a lot of people who are informed, who are staying as up to date as possible, and who are seeing things and thinking, this is not what I voted for. This is not what I wanted. And they're starting to kind of change their perception of all of this. And I think it's really important that we stay open to bringing those people on our side. And I know that that's not a popular talking point right now. I've been talking a lot about unity in the last, 8 months of my time here on YouTube. And it's not a popular talking point. People don't like it. And in my last video, I talked a lot about this kind of unlikely alliance that could happen between Christians and ex-Christians. A lot of people didn't like that either, So I understand that this talk of unity is not popular. Even by people on the left, but I don't care because I think it's important and needed. And I think we need to understand that this entire situation we are in is incredibly complex. It is incredibly nuanced. There is not one, there's not one solution, and people on the left, people on the right aren't fitting into these binary, boxes that we put them in. Be open to the fact that not everybody who voted for Trump is a loyalist to Trump. that not everybody who voted for Trump is a bigot, a racist, a homophobe. I say that, and I know there are people watching this that get that like gut feeling and want to put up a wall, want to probably hit unsubscribe right now. There are probably people right now hitting unsubscribe. But before you hit that button, please understand the difference between giving an excuse or justification for bad behavior or unsavory behavior or an unsavory vote. There's a difference between giving an excuse and better understanding it or looking at it realistically. And realistically, there are people who voted for Trump that do have good hearts, have good intentions, and are incredibly susceptible to disinformation, to manipulation, media manipulation, community, religious manipulation. It really helps me to think about individual situations, individual stories. I think about a young mother who was raised in the Baptist church, who has lived her whole life under the support system of her religious family and her community, her church community, who got married very young because she believed it was what she was supposed to do, who had several kids in her 20s and is now, got 3 kids and is constantly taking them all over the place to church and soccer practice and school, and who probably doesn't have a very loving, nice husband and is always cleaning the house and taking care of everyone and pouring her whole entire life into doing what she thinks is the right thing to do because her church told her, God said that was her only purpose in life, was to be basically a doormat for everyone and a helper and a nice Proverbs 31 woman. And it is her job and her duty to obey her husband, to take care of her kids, and to obey the church and the Bible and God, and to do what they say and to be sweet and submissive. And so she's told that Trump is the chosen one. Trump is God's candidate. And she doesn't have a moment between taking her 3 kids to all of their various extracurricular activities to educate and inform herself about what's happening in the United States government. And then at the end of the day, when she has 20 minutes in a bubble bath after she's put her kids to bed and fed them, she doesn't want to sit there and look at the news. She wants to just unwind or chat with a friend. And she really doesn't have time to educate and inform herself. And she gets all of her information, her political news from her husband, who comes home and tells her what to believe, or her pastor who tells her what to believe. And then she's told that it is her duty to go to the voting booth and vote, that she has to do that. That is her obligation to God and to the country, is to cast her vote, and it better be for Trump. And so what does she do? She's a nice, sweet, submissive woman, and she goes to the voting booth and she votes for Trump. And she has absolutely no idea what's going on in the country. And I know that there are people listening to this rolling their eyes saying, oh, well, everybody can inform themselves. And I'm sorry, but the reality is that most people can't. We are in a world, in a society that was built on Christian nationalism, on capitalism, and a lot of people just serve their roles in that, and they never really think twice about it. It is created to keep us uneducated, to keep us uninformed, overworked, tired, apathetic, feeling like we don't have power, feeling like we don't have a voice. They don't want us to think that we have power and that we have a voice, and so they do everything in their power to create a society and create a system where people don't, and they don't think that they do, and they don't have the ability or capacity to inform or educate themselves. So I try to think about those individual stories because I know that there are so many more than I can even think of. And I know that there are so many people that those stories apply to. And I know that in this situation where we've already experienced the Trump presidency, we know how bad it gets. We've already experienced January 6th and the treason that occurred on that day, and watched as there were no consequences for that. And in fact, this administration is back again and in power. And we look around and we go, how could anybody vote for this? How could anybody that votes for this wants this? Obviously, they like this. And I'm asking you, I'm begging you to be realistic, to stay grounded in reality, and to be willing to understand and accept that not everybody fits in the box you want to put them in. And not every situation is what you think. And not every single person that voted for Trump is a bad person with bad intentions that wants to cause you and the country harm. I'm not saying nobody who voted for Trump is in that position. I'm just saying not everybody is. And when we realize that, it will help us move forward in a way where we have hope and we want to take action because we realize we're not outnumbered. That not only did the majority not vote for Trump, but even those that voted for Trump might be regretting it or might just need to be informed in a kind, compassionate way, not in a way that shames them and guilts them, because when you shame people and guilt them, you don't do anything but push them further away. So I really think we need to take the approach that people can change their minds. We should be open to letting people change their minds. And I hope that this video can serve as a reminder, some clarification to this claim so that you don't keep repeating it. When you hear others repeating it, you can bring them some hope, because this video is about bringing you hope and reminding you that it's not as bad as you think. Not this administration. This administration is worse than I thought it was going to be be honest, but that the American support for this administration is not as bad as you think. And when you're trapped in your little online algorithm bubbles and you're being fed all of this information that specific platform wants to feed you based on your interests, it becomes very easy to think that is a reflection of the real world, and it hardly ever is. So often social media is just used as a rage machine and is filled with bots and trolls. There are more bots and trolls than people at this point, I think. And so when you get into the comments and you see all these comments of people supporting Trump, I think it's safe to say that half of those comments are from bots. Many are from trolls, and many are people that are commenting that are being influenced by bots and trolls. And so we've got to get out of our bubbles. We got to get out of our algorithms. We got to get out into the community and meet and talk to people, because it's going to look very different than what we see online and what we see in the media. And it's going to bring us hope. When I go out protesting in the second reddest district in the entire United States, and I'm holding up signs that are very anti-Trump, anti-GOP, I get significantly more support, honks, waves, thumbs up, than I do people getting angry. Don't believe everything you're seeing on the media. Don't believe everything you're seeing online. Get out in the community and talk to people, meet people. I promise you that there is less support for Trump than you think. And there are more minds that you can change. There are more perspectives that can shift than you realize. We have to be willing to put in the effort. I know not everybody can. People are tired. They're hopeless. They're apathetic. And I don't blame you if you're in that position. I don't. But if you're able, and you have the ability, the capacity, the desire to get out there and to protest and to join demonstrations and groups, I'm asking you to do that, and I'm asking you to do it with an open mind, and just be willing to find those in your community that don't fit the mold you thought they did. Find people who are regretting their vote, find people who are feeling apathetic and hopeless, and let's fire each other up. Let's get each other concerned about these things that are concerning, and let's all work together to move forward and resist this administration, because we need a lot of numbers, and we have the numbers. I think people just haven't woken up yet. They think half the country supports this, so what's the point? But when all of those people realize that Trump's got like a quarter of the population behind him, and that number is dwindling by the day as he just destroys our government with a chainsaw alongside Elon Musk, as that dwindles down, then it's going to be a lot easier to grow in these numbers and to get the support we need to preserve our country, our freedoms, and our democracy.